Welcome to the Old Vine Conference podcast, brought to you by the Old Vine Conference, a nonprofit organization galvanizing a global movement to nurture and value great old vines and their wines. The Old Vine Conference is dedicated to the protection, preservation, and promotion of old vines. We seek to create a commercially viable and sustainable category. Since its founding, the Old Vine Conference has contributed exponentially to the awareness, understanding, and support of the global old vine movement. Join me, Cynthia Chaplin, as I help to uncover stories and conversations with old vine champions from around the world, discuss best practice, debate definitions, and share new strategies from vineyard to glass. Hello and welcome to the Old Vines podcast. This is Cynthia Chaplin, and today I am in Piedmont with Tessa Donnadieu, the export manager for Vinchio Vaglio in Piedmont, making Barbera. Tessa, thank you so much for speaking with me today. We've been here for a couple of days, having a wonderful time with the Old Vine Conference. We've brought journalists and producers and wine writers and all sorts of other people from several countries to Vinchio Vaglio, which is a combination of two small villages who got together in the late 1950s to form a cooperative to protect and preserve Barbera, to make Barbera into better wine than it had been previously. And of course, our purpose today is talk about the old vines that are part of the Vinchio Vaglio system and part of the cooperativa. So we're looking at 500 hectares here with 200 families who participate in the cooperativa. And just to set the scene for our conversation, I have this lovely quote from Franco Laiolo, who is a writer born in Vinchio and was writing this in the 1980s, somewhere around there, round about the time that the Old Vine, the Vecchie Vigne project started here at Vinchio Vaglio. So bear with me and I'll just quote from Franco. He wrote, "How many vineyards did our ancestors wrest from the woods, choosing the most exposed hills and slopes so that bunches of grapes that gave good wine could ripen perfectly. This colossal work required the contribution of thousands of arms, hoes, mattocks, and spades in years without written records, when highly energetic, frenetic farmers, capable of miracles out of sheer necessity, uprooted enormous trees and planted Barbera vines that could withstand the aridity of the shell-filled sands and the rugged slopes to produce unsurpassed grapes." I couldn't say it any better myself, absolutely, having walked on the slopes today where everything is done by hand and seen the beautiful Barbera vineyards. So Tessa, please tell us a little bit about how the Vecchie Vigne, the Old Vine project at Vinchio Vaglio, came about. The cooperativa was founded in the 1950s, but it wasn't until the 1980s that you arrived at this point. So fill us in.
Thank you, Cynthia. Welcome to Vinchio, of course, and thank you to give us the opportunity to speak about that beautiful project. Of course, we started I have to say, in a very dark period for the Italian enology, especially in 1986, when the scandal of the methanol just popped up. And we were totally, as I can say, desperate about that situation. But of course, as the vines, people are very resilient. So we just thought that there could be a way to just change the way we do the wine, the way we produce the wine, the way we work in the vineyards to give a better quality. We really wanted to stick out of that period, that dark period.
For our listeners, just in case anyone isn't aware, in the mid-1980s, 1986, Italy suffered the terrible disgrace and terrible tragedy of the methanol scandal, where 22 people died drinking very low-quality, inexpensive wine that had been fortified with methanol, which, of course, was toxic. So it was, as you said, Tessa, a terribly dark, very tragic time, and it was uncertain whether Italian wine would recover. So here in Vinchio Vaglio, what did the cooperative do to lift their spirits and to change the path?
So there were three, I would say, visionary people. The first one was Giuliano Noè, which is considered the most noble father for the Barbera. It was really the first. Is an amazing enologist, and he was really the first to believe in we say there is a word in Italian, say, dutile, the absolutely versatility of that grape. And he thought, because of the intrinsic, the specific characteristic of that grape, the tannin, the acidity, and of course the way you work in the vineyards, and trying to map those very old vines, we would manage to get long lasting and more complex wine coming from that grapes.
It's such an important moment. So Giuliano Noè, as you mentioned, and as you called him, I love it, the father of Barbera, he was the mastermind behind setting a format and guiding other producers, developing the regulations about old vines and about Barbera, and championing this grape, getting other producers on board with him to work in specific ways in the vineyard and to protect these old vines. So let's talk about some of these old vines that you have on the property. How old are your old vines?
At that time, we really decided to draw our internal regulation to get into that specific project. So we decided to map the vines who were at the time at least 50 years old vines. Today, of course, we have those very, very old vines, and the oldest vine is from 1947.
1947. That is a very old vine now.
Yes, exactly. So what we know, this was really the oldest. From tip today, this is really the oldest vine we have.
Well, in those days, in the 1980s, Barbera was thought of as a very simple wine, farmer's wine, to be drunk young, drink it every day, not the best quality. It's a very vigorous vine, so people had planted quite a lot of it. It got along very well in this microclimate, quite warm, quite sunny, and they were making a huge quantity of Barbera, but the quality was pretty average, if not poor. So why did you decide to focus on the old vines? What were they bringing to the Barbera at that time?
Because of course, we needed to improve in certain way. We needed to improve the quality of that grape. It was considered really as a table wine, as every day, for the workers, because it was like the energy. People used to drink maybe a glass of Barbera at lunchtime to give the energy to work. But of course, Giuliano has that idea to work specifically to give maybe some oak aging, to try to make an aging of that wines.
That's a very revolutionary idea.
It was the innovation to try to enhance a little bit of tannin, because Barbera has very low tannin, and because of the high acidity and the tannin, thanks to the oak aging, maybe we will manage to get this long-lasting and more complex wine. So that was really the first idea.
This conversation has been brought to you by the Old Vine Conference, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection, preservation, and promotion of old vines by connecting and inspiring the global wine community through a program of conferences, research, and education. Our work is funded via membership, sponsorship, grants, and philanthropy. Join our growing membership of wineries, trade partners, generic bodies, and individual wine enthusiasts to become part of our global campaign. Contact us via our website, oldvines.org, or DM us on Instagram at ouroldvines.
Of course, the yield per hectare, because they are very low, nearly 40 quintals.
And most Barbera is about 90 quintals per hectare, is that right?
Exactly. And especially because the physiognomy of the territory. with the steep slope steel, the altitude. We really can't have those high yields per hectare. So we really need, to work carefully. But at that time, the most important, especially because we needed to keep that patrimony in life, the wine growers, they need like motivation, even if they were really passionate. So we try to reward them, giving like a better income for this wine. So we decided to pay at that time 20% more of the market.
That's an incredible belief in the product that you hoped you would create, because Barbera at the time wasn't a luxury wine at all. There, as you said, people were drinking it just as a lunchtime pick-me-up and to have a little bit more energy. I think I'm in the wrong line of work. Maybe I should be drinking Barbera at lunchtime. But
Probably.
It was a confidence in these vines. So we know that old vines, although they produce fewer grapes, less than half of the yield, they are more concentrated. They are resistant to disease and to pests. So giving your members in the cooperative a 20% sort of bonus for not taking up their old vines, not replanting, keeping them, knowing that their yield would be lower, that was pretty revolutionary in the 1980s. So I know that the first vintage of the Vecchie Vigne project at Vinchio Vaglio was in 1987, and the commission was not too happy about it. And they said it didn't follow the regulations, and so they demanded that it be called Vino di Tavola, the lowest of the low. So what happened in the year following the release of that first Vecchia Vigne?
The evolution, I think, came with the really first, the evolution of the appellation from Barbera d'Asti DOC, and then it became a DOCG in 2008. Because it was really, those old vines really were the best of our production. They became like a cru.
Exactly. And I think the important step we're missing out is that in 1998, so only 1 year later, the commission saw the big success and said, "Oh dear, we're so sorry.
Exactly.
We would like to let you in to the DOC now." So only 1 year of being Vino di Tavola.
Absolutely.
Which shows the quality of the wine that was produced. How many families were with the Cooperativo in 1987, 1988?
19 families.
And now you've grown to 200.
Exactly.
So that's an enormous leap in not many years. So I think you've convinced more producers to come on board. I've been here now for a couple of days, traveling around, seeing the vineyards, beautiful sandy soil, vineyards that are worked all by hand, and tasted a lot of the wine. So it's very interesting to see how this project has brought people together and turned this cooperativo, and let's face it, there are a lot of cooperativos in Piemonte that are not very good quality. But Vinchio Vaglio now has been awarded prizes by Gambero Rosso. And this year was an important year for you as well, because you have finally earned the Equalitas Sustainable Certificate. Yes. How did that happen?
It happened from the beginning, because in the 60s, the cooperative born with the idea of giving, at the time, most of the wine, especially from the cooperative, they were sold in bulk, and everything was in the end of the bottlers and negociants. But they decided at that time, because they wanted to have the control of the price of the grapes, the price of their efforts, their work. So they wanted to, so that's why the cooperative born. Then, of course, the first quality project arrived with the old vines in the early 90s. And then it was just a continuous work, constant work in protecting the territory and improving, so we had these beautiful vineyards, which is, of course, from 2014 became a UNESCO patrimony, World Heritage Patrimony, and it was really, for the landscape and the hills and the vineyards, which was like a beautiful rewarding for all the wine growers. They were working every day in the vineyards. And then after we decide from that very, traditional viticulture, they invest in the 2009 for the 50th anniversary of the winery. They invest in very high quality equipment to contrast with the traditional viticulture, because everything is by hand. The physiognomy of the territory is very difficult to work. So they decided to invest in a high-tech bottling line, solar panel. I think everything came time to time. Every decade, the cooperative made like new efforts, a new investment. And they, of course, today in 2023, for us to get that sustainability certification is just the result of nearly 60 years of constant work on the territory.
Well, I was talking to your president, Lorenzo Giordano, today, and he said that the philosophy has always been tradition and heritage and patrimony in the vineyard, but innovation and technology and looking to the future in the cellar. And I think you've just summed that up. So having been awarded the certificate from Equalitas as a sustainable cooperativo, which is a very difficult thing to achieve, minimum of 5 years in Italy to have that happen. I just want to ask you, as the export manager, what do you think the Old Vines project at Vinchio Vaglio has brought to the company? Has it opened doors for you for sales? Has it opened doors to new markets for you? Having these very sort of exalted products, and Barbera is quite flexible, from a young and fruity wine made in steel or cement all the way up to things that you've been doing with selected pieces of vineyard, cru vineyards, as you mentioned, and use of all different woods, tonneau, barrique, old wood, new wood. What has this project done in terms of opening doors for Vinchio Vaglio in the market and in the external market internationally?
For hers, I always say when I want to go back to that organization, the Old Wine Conference. When I met for the first time Sarah Abbott, Master of Wine, it was it's very strange because it seemed we knew each other since ever. And when I started speaking to her about the Old Wine project, she just understood exactly. And I found an international voice to speak a project that we started in the early 90s. It's now a new direction for the cooperative communication, because it's just a project that is in our roots, and we have that incredible voice now today thanks to the Old Vine project. So for us, for me, for my work at the moment, it's incredible how much interest the people have for the old vines from east to west of the world, because it's something that bring history, that bring culture. And I think that is a point of distinguish ourselves. We do Barbera since ever, but it's a point of distinction for a very special Barbera. It's not like the Barbera. Her Barbera is that Barbera from the old vine. So it's very important for us now. It's a point of communication.
I think that is a fantastic way to look at it. And I'm so glad to have met you and been involved with you at the Old Vine Conference over the past few days. And I'm so happy that you're working with us and that Vinchio Vaglio is finding the success through this very laborious project of doing their old vine wines in several different vinifications. So I'm delighted that you shared all of this with us. Thank you so much. And if there are producers listening or anyone in the wine industry who's listening who would like to know more, how can they reach Vinchio Vaglio?
So thank you, Cynthia, for your kind words. And if you want to contact us, you can go, of course, on our website, vinchio.com, and you have all our contact details. You can write an email at welcome@vinchio.com, or you can follow us on our social media at Vinchio Vaglio in Instagram and Facebook, or contact us directly in DMs.
And you can, anyone who would like to, I'm sure, can come and visit you, as I have had the great good fortune to do over the past few days.
By the way, for us, welcoming people at the winery is one of the most important projects. So we have a beautiful natural trail path called the Path of the Nest. It's just down from the winery up to the vineyards, and it's beautiful.
It's a stunning path. I saw it today with many little stops called the nests,
Yes.
where people can stop, relax, see the vineyards, view, as I saw this morning, the fog being burnt off by the beautiful autumn sun, but also to really experience where Barbera is growing at its best and its healthiest here in Piemonte. So thank you so much for having Old Vine Conference here and for being a part of everything that we do. It's been really lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. It was wonderful to spend some time with you, and everybody is very welcome to come and visit us.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Old Vine Conference podcast. We hope you'll join us again next time for another great conversation. This podcast episode is a campaign financed according to the EU regulation number 2021/2115. The Old Vine Conference podcast shines the spotlight on inspiring and informative old vine stories around the world, helping to build a community and spark a conversation. If you enjoyed what you heard, please help us by sharing this episode, rating us on Apple or Spotify, leaving us a comment, or becoming a member. You can find all the information you need on oldvines.org and follow us on Instagram @ouroldvines. See you next time.